The Ukrainian military has launched a large-scale offensive in Kursk Oblast of Russia, with Russian artillery struggling to respond and drones being neutralized by Ukrainian electronic warfare systems. The Russian project VChK-OGPU reports, citing informed sources in military circles. Ukraine's forces started their incursion into Russia's Kursk Oblast last August. Within the first few weeks, they took control of approximately 1,300 square kilometers of Russian territory. By now, the Russians have retaken more than half of the territory Ukraine controlled. Currently, Ukrainian forces are attacking on several fronts in Kursk Oblast, catching Russian forces by surprise. The offensive was confirmed by Andrii Yermak, head of the Ukrainian President's office, and later acknowledged by the Russian Ministry of Defense, which reported the beginning of the Ukrainian assault. There is significant concern among the Russians in Kursk Oblast, as they were attacked from multiple directions, which were unexpected for them. The defense forces are engaged, reported the head of Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council, Andrii Kovalenko. According to VChK-OGPU sources, an attack with armored vehicles was underway from the Sudza district towards Berdin and Velika Soldatsky settlements. In response to the Ukrainian advance, Russian Deputy Defense Ministry Yunusbek Yevkurov urgently arrived in Kursk Oblast. Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance groups have been spotted in the Berdin settlement and surrounding areas. The Ukrainian soldiers are advancing in tightly packed formations, and Russian artillery is unable to cope. During the offensive, all radio frequencies and even the internet were jammed. As a result, unmanned aerial vehicle operators are powerless. Launching drones into the air is futile until Ukraine's electronic warfare systems are neutralized, the report said. Ukrainian publication Liga says that Russian military bloggers claim Ukrainian forces have concentrated significant equipment and manpower in the area. According to their reports, Ukrainian forces are attacking in the direction in Badin-Bolsho, Soldatsko, northeast of Ukraine-controlled Sudza. This location is approximately 70 kilometers from the regional center, Kursk city. A major offensive by the Ukrainian Defense Forces continues in the Kursk region. The Ukrainian command maintains a ceasefire, but Z channels have already reported the loss of a number of settlements. A very powerful electronic warfare system was deployed, which paralyzed the work of Russian aerial reconnaissance and attack UAVs. The offensive of the Ukrainian military in the Kursk region is proceeding in very dense ranks. The artillery of the Russian armed forces is not coping. Also, during the offensive, all radio frequencies and even the internet were jammed. Therefore, UAV operators are powerless. While the Ukrainian armed forces' electronic warfare is working, it is useless to raise drones into the air, reported VChK-OGPU. The Russian armed forces are experiencing serious difficulties in repelling the large-scale offensive of Ukrainian forces in the Kursk region. The main obstacle was the powerful jammers that the Ukrainian armed forces used as they moved forward. The famous Russian Z-War correspondent, fighter bomber, who is associated with the Russian military aviation, writes about this in his blog. He confirmed the information that one of the key components of the Ukrainian offensive was a very powerful electronic warfare system. It not only blinded the Russian armed forces' intelligence on the ground, but also deprived the Russians of the ability to strike the Ukrainian armed forces with attack drones. In 2024, Uralvagonzavod could transfer to the Russian troops about 20 T-72B and T-72B1 tanks modernized to the T-72B3 standard. In addition, the Russian army could have received approximately 60 to 80 new production T-90M tanks, as well as a certain number of tank support combat vehicles, Defense 24 reports. This amount is clearly insufficient to cover the losses of Russian forces during a full-scale war, which some experts estimate at approximately 3,700 tanks. It is worth mentioning that this figure includes not only destroyed but also damaged and captured vehicles. The number of destroyed Russian tanks is estimated at approximately 2,600 units. Defense24 notes that Moscow is running out of strategic reserves of some types of combat vehicles that were produced in the Soviet Union. First of all, we are talking about tanks of the T-80 family, the reserves of which are mostly exhausted. The number of T-72 tanks is also decreasing. This means that over time there will be a shortage of vehicles suitable for repair, and Russia will have to rely only on current production, which does not meet its needs. Experts remind that at the moment, Ural Vagonzavod is the only Russian enterprise that produces tanks from scratch. Others are only capable of repairing and modernizing such equipment. The war in Ukraine is draining Russia's inventory of weapons faster than replacements can be built, while industries critical to the defense sector warn on high interest rates. More evidence is piling up that Russia's military-industrial complex is nearing the brink after nearly 3 years of fighting in Ukraine. In recent months, leaders in the defense industry and adjacent sectors that are critical to the war machine have sounded alarms. Contractors in the Russian defense industry are reporting non-payments and higher financing costs. Alexandra Prokopenko, a fellow at the Carnegie Russia-Eurasia Center, told the Washington Post. Meanwhile, other analysts have predicted that the Russian economy can't sustain Putin's war on Ukraine past next year, as the ability to replace battlefield losses with Cold War weapons runs out. For example, the military is losing about 320 tanks and artillery cannon barrels a month, while Russian factories can produce only 20 each month, forcing the Kremlin to dig into aging Soviet stockpiles. But that's not enough, and Russia will run out of barrels sometime in 2025, according to a recent analysis in Foreign Policy magazine. The situation was dire even last year, when Russia's largest movie studio donated about 50 tanks and armored vehicles from the 1950s that it had been using as props. Ukraine is developing effective strikes on occupied Crimea, destroying both enemy infrastructure and extensive air defense systems, but there are still many military resources left on the peninsula. This was stated in an interview with Ukrainian radio by military expert and founder of the reactive mail organization Pavlo Narozny. According to him, in Crimea over the past year, 2 major achievements can be noted. First of all, this is the destruction of the largest oil depot in Simferopol by drones. This is an important point, because when we talk about destroying bases somewhere in the Ryazan, Rostov, Bryansk regions, these bases can be restored relatively easily. But in Crimea, it is much more difficult. Yes, storage containers can be delivered there by rail across the bridge, but such rolling stock with a huge amount of diesel or other oil products will be a very good target. Another way is by sea, but let's remember about sea drones. Therefore, it will be much more difficult to return a destroyed oil depot in Crimea to working order than in continental Russia. Narozny explained. The second point, according to him, is the destruction of a huge number of air defense, missile defense systems in Crimea, in particular the S-300 and S-400. He noted that there are approximately 50 to 55 S-400 systems in Russia, so each such system destroyed is simply a huge blow to their ability to repel our missile attacks. At the same time, he noted that there are still many military targets left in Crimea. Crimea is now a truly huge testing ground. The entire coastline there is fortified. A huge number of air defense, missile defense systems have been brought in. There is still a huge amount of aircraft at the Saki military airfield. We have hit Saki many times and successfully destroyed equipment and infrastructure there, but all the same, this aircraft is still working there. There is still work to be done there. That is, there are military units, arsenals, airfields, and so on, literally at every step, the expert concluded. Recently, during a battle in the Black Sea near Cape Tarkankut in the temporarily occupied Crimea, a Russian Mi-8 helicopter was destroyed as a result of the use of R-73 Sea Dragon missiles. Another Russian helicopter was damaged by fire and managed to land damaged. Recently, it was reported online that a drone damaged the Russian vessel Fedor Uryupin, which was in a bay near the village of Chernomorskoy.